are you using CSS custom properties? I mean, actually using them, not just loading them in your builder, but actually taking advantage of the power of CSS custom properties in your web design process. If you want to learn how you can use CSS custom properties to be more efficient, save time, and build better websites, you're in the right place because that's exactly what we will see together in this video. Hello, my name is Cedric. Thanks for joining me for this new video. And on my channel, you will find videos about how to use OxyProps, a CSS custom properties-based plugin for Oxygen Builder. But you will also find videos like this one, dealing with more fundamental web design concepts and how to use them for your benefit when using Oxygen. And let's start by creating a new website, and I will call this website Web Design Tokens. And why web design tokens? You may already have heard me using this word. Well, that's because web design tokens are the core elements of a design system. So our site was created, by the way, if you are interested in learning how I set up my local development environment using Laravel Valet, let me know in the comments, and this could be a topic for a next video. For now, let's go to the dashboard. And we have a blank Oxygen install. For information, my script did install and activate Oxygen. That's why I see this prompt when I first enter my dashboard. So let's go for a blank install. And here we are in WordPress. And the only plugin install is Oxygen, and I have version 4.0.1 RC1. And that's the only thing we will need for this video. You will see that we will use only Oxygen. Let's create a new page. I will name it Web Design Tokens, publish, and edit with Oxygen. So while Oxygen is loading, what are web design tokens? Well, that was fast. Design tokens are design choices or design decisions. They are basic elements of your design system. When you build your website and you want a consistent design across your website, you know that you need to have consistent colors, consistent sizes, consistent typography. And to achieve this consistency, you will either define by yourself or use an external framework that will bring design tokens to your website. And there are several levels of design tokens: global tokens, aliases tokens, or logical tokens, logical colors, for example, as I call them in OxyProps, and component level tokens. All of them are important, all of them have different use cases, and this is what we will see together, starting with our global tokens. So I will go to my style sheets and add a style sheet that I will name global tokens. Okay. And to help me, I will use a third-party set of color design tokens. And I will use OpenColor. OpenColor is an open source color scheme, and OpenColor is also part of OxyProps color system. It offers several color swatches. If you use OxyProps, of course, you will recognize some of them. And in OpenColor, all of them have 10 different shades from 0 to 9. So let's use OpenColor as our color global token. For that, let's go to GitHub and we will go to the OpenColor CSS. I'll get the raw file, copy everything, and back to Oxygen, I will pass this file in my global tokens style sheet. Just take care, if your system works like mine, it added a small piece of text at the top. It's written copied. I need to delete it, otherwise my style sheet won't work. And from now, we have access to the full OpenColor color system. And these are design tokens in the form of CSS custom properties. So a global design token purpose is first to make design choices. We have a list of specific colors to choose from, but another purpose of global tokens are to transform meaningless data, like a color hex code, for example, into something readable by a human. I have no idea what F8, F9, FA will display as a color, but thanks to my global token, my CSS custom property, I know that this will be a very light gray. Another thing specific to global token is that most of the time they are used as constants. My property OC-gray-0 will always keep the value of F8, F9, F8. And that's important because when global tokens can be considered as constants, the other ones should not be considered constants. They should be considered variables. That's why CSS custom properties are also called CSS variables, because that's where they are the most helpful. When you think of them as variable and start redefining their values depending on the context of usage. But first, let's check if our color system is working. I will add a section, and in this section, I will add a heading and a text. Back to my section, I want to give it a background color. And for my background, I will use my neutral color, my gray color. And I want a light background, so I will use my global token, my CSS custom property, _OC-gray-2, for example. But writing it like this doesn't work, because to use a CSS custom property, you must wrap it in a var function. So let's add parentheses and var. And my section background turn gray. I want to modify my text color, and I will use also a dark version this time of my neutral color. Let's say it will be a gray 7. Maybe it's not very visible in the video, but the text did change color. And for my heading, I want to use my brand color. And for my brand, I will use the indigo color from OpenColor. So I will use var _OC indigo, and I will go for the 6th shade. And my text is now indigo. So of course, this is already very interesting. We have imported a framework. This framework makes CSS custom properties available to us to use in our element design, but that is only the beginning, because those CSS custom properties are constant and they are not reactive to anything. For example, my system preference is set to dark mode, but here you can see that we have a light version of our page, and if I switch between light and dark, nothing happens. In addition, if I create another section and that I want this section to be the same background as the first one, I have to come and add my custom property. And later, if I want to change the background of both sections, I have to come back to each section and modify the background color. Some of you could argue that I should have created a custom class and apply this background to my custom class and then duplicate the class to other section. But actually, that's not what we need. What we need is another level of design tokens. So let's come back to our style sheets and add a new one, and I will call this one Alias token. And the idea with Alias tokens is to define a CSS custom property, a CSS variable, which name defines the intent of this color. What is it used for? For example, in OxyProps, I define background colors as surface colors, and we have 4 surface property, 1, 2, 3, 4, with the idea of defining a difference in elevation for the surface. In light mode, lighter colors will look farther. In dark mode, lighter color will look closer to the user. So let's create some tokens, and to create them you have several options, but most of the time you will define them at the root level of your document. So you have 2 choices. You can either use root, but you could also use HTML. Why choose one rather than the other one? Well, when you decide, there are 2 main elements. First one, you could argue that CSS applies to any XML document, not only HTML. So if you want your style sheet to be usable with something else than HTML element, for example SVG, you would use root, as root will always target the root element of your document. That will be the HTML element in an HTML document, but that will be the SVG element in an SVG document. So using root makes your CSS usable with any XML document. So that can be one of the reasons for your choice. The second one is about specificity. Root, as a pseudo class, has a higher specificity than HTML. So this will be your choice. If you want a higher specificity, you can use root. If you want a lower specificity, you can use HTML. In the case of OxyProps, as my target was to build a framework with as little specificity as possible to make styles easy to override for the user, all the properties are defined at the HTML element level and not at the root pseudo-class level. But this is completely up to you. For this example, let's use root, as the Oxygen CSS rendering theme uses a more readable color for you. So I will use root. And I will say that my surface 1 will be a var gray 0. My surface 2 will be a gray 1. My surface 3 will be a gray 2. And my surface 4 will be a gray 3. Perfect. And back to my page, I will define my first section background as my surface 1 and my second section background as my surface 2. I'm not sure this is very visible for you, so I will add contrast and choose surface 4. Okay, so if I duplicate my section and make this one a surface 1, I now have color with different backgrounds. And if I later think that there is not enough contrast and that I want to increase contrast between my different surfaces, I don't have to go to each section and change the background color. Because I defined an alias token, that is my surface, and that this has a meaning based on the intent, the purpose of my color. I don't want to change the fact that sections are surface 1 and sections are surface 4. I want to increase contrast between surfaces, so I just want to change the value of my surface. So I can go to my tokens and decide that my surface 4 is not a gray 3, but is a gray 5, for example, and this modifies the color value everywhere it is used on my website. Let's come back to a gray 3. So this is already a nice improvement. You define colors with a logical meaning in mind. I want this to be my surface. I want this to be my brand color. I want this to be my links color. I want this one to be my accent color. And we are discussing colors, but the same applies to sizes. For example, you have global tokens with different sizes. But then you decide that your container block padding is a size 2 and that your container inline padding is a size 5, for example. And then when designing, you use your alias. And later, if you want to change your container block padding, just go to your style sheet, change the value assigned to this CSS custom property or CSS variable, and this will change throughout your whole website. So we have defined our surface. Let's define our brand color. This will be the indigo 6. And let's define our body text. This will be gray 7. And let's apply this to our text. This will be our brand and our text, but it's defined at the section level, will be our body text. And now every design element in our page is assigned a custom property, but not a global one. It's not a value from the original framework. It's an intermediate one. It's an alias token and they are defined, which means that now we can redefine the value for each one each time we need to. And for example, we need to because we want our site to be responsive to light and dark mode according to our user preferences. And for now, this is not the case. And once you go into actually using CSS properties, you will see how easy it is to be responsive to light and dark mode. So first, I will create a new style sheet that I will call main styles. No, let's call it normalize, because what we will do is part of what a normalize does. And that's part of what OxyProps normalize does when you activate it in the plugin. So in our normalize, this will be very simple. We will just set the HTML background color to our surface 1. And if I can spell it properly. And now the whole page background has switched to my surface 1. Let's go back to our aliases. And to make our site responsive to light and dark mode, we will add a media query at media parenthesis prefers dash color dash theme, and this time it will be dark because by default our properties are applied to light mode. Curly brackets, and then I will copy my whole declaration with the selector inside my media query. Let's indent it properly. And now I will redefine my surface, brand and body text values for dark mode. So in dark mode, I want to invert my surfaces, and my surface 1 will be the darkest gray. It will be a gray 9. And maybe you saw that instantly, as my system is set to dark mode, my page becomes responsive to dark mode and the page color switched to the gray 9. So my surface 2 will be 8. My surface 3 will be 7, 6. My brand color will be 3, and my body text color will be 2. Let's save that and have a look. So now this is my page in dark mode. My page background, because that's what I set in my normalized style sheet, uses surface 1. So the whole canvas is responsive thanks to this declaration. My 2 sections also use surface 1, and these 2 use surface 4, which is a lighter version. My headline defined to my brand color did switch to the shade I just defined for dark mode, which is a lighter one. To have a better contrast, it is always a good idea to use a lighter version, less saturated version of colors for dark mode, for user reading comfort. And my text did switch to my body text. And now if I go to my system settings and switch from dark mode to light mode, the system adapts automatically, and back to dark mode, it adapts. And now let's discuss the third level of design tokens, and this will be the element level. This section will be a CSS grid with 3 columns. I will add a div, and inside this div, I will add an icon, a heading, a text, and with this we will create a card. This text was not responsive to the dark version because I did not set my font color in my normalize. So I can do it right now and say that at my HTML level, my color will be a var body text. And let's have a look, and we see that this doesn't work. And this is because Oxygen default settings override this. So we can go to global styles, body text, and set the color to var body text. And now it uses our custom property. Back to my card, I will add a text link. This will be my card heading. Let's add a few lorem ipsum. This will be my card link, and I want my card link, my card heading, and my icon to be my brand color. So I could go to each element and modify the color, and this brings once again the problem of future proofing. If you later want to modify the color, you will have to modify it in several places. So let's go to my card, and now it can be a good idea to create a custom class to store our variable, because this time we will define CSS custom properties, and here the name of CSS custom properties really deserves the meaning, because we will define a custom property for our card element. So let's create the my card class, and in my card I will go to my custom CSS and define my card highlight color, for example, and set it to my brand. And with this, I can come to my icon and define the color to my card highlight color. The icon is a child of my card, and thanks to the CSS cascade and the inheritance principle, the color defined in a custom property at the parent level will be accessible by all children. Same thing for the heading, and same thing for my text link. I want to change the background color for my card, so I will define a card BG and set it to my surface 2. And now I will use my card BG as the background color. I will go to my custom CSS and I will define my card padding, and I will set this to 2 rems, and go to my size and spacing and define my padding and apply to all sides. I will define my card gap to 1 rem and set my gap to my var card gap. Okay, you get the point. If I switch to light mode, you see that the card is responsive because we used our intermediate properties, our alias properties, and not the global tokens. Back to dark mode, and maybe you are wondering why I did define properties in my custom CSS to reassign them directly on my element. Well, this is because now if I want to duplicate my card, I can come to my class custom CSS, grab these custom properties, and I can create a card big spaces. And in this new class, go to the custom CSS, past my custom properties, and as they are custom properties, I will redefine my card padding to 4 and my card gap to 2 rems. And you see that by doing this, those custom properties act exactly as we could expect them as custom properties. We have defined them at an element level, And we now simply have to redefine the properties values so the element adapts. I can duplicate it, remove this class, create a my card red, why not? Back to my custom CSS and define that my highlight color will be the open color red 4. And you see that the color changes and that my surface will be the open color red 9. But now what I just did is not responsive to light and dark. So let's go to my style sheet, my alias, create a red accent that will be my var red 6 in light mode, a red BG accent that will be red 1 in light mode, redefine those values for dark mode with a red 3 and a red 9, back to my card, advanced, and instead of using a global token, let's add the one I just created. It will be my red accent and it will be my red BG accent. And now if I switch to light, my card is responsive. If I switch to dark, my card is responsive. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. If you learned something, if you think this will be useful for you, please leave a like. Tell me in the comments how you plan to use it, if you have additional questions. If you want to see more videos like this one, consider subscribing to the channel. And if you want to use a framework completely built on this concept and giving you easy and instant access to the system global tokens, intermediate tokens, and component level tokens, consider getting OxyProps and start building awesome websites. I'll see you in the next video.